Let us discuss what is going on with the White House this week. It's been chaotic because as Kevin McCarthy announces this impeachment inquiry, the White House has been struggling to contain the media. In fact, they issued some dictates earlier this week that the media is not to cover the impeachment case seriously. They're not to cover the evidence against Biden seriously. And instead, they're to train their weapons on Republicans. Is the media following suit? Let's explore with our next guest, Miranda Devine. She's a columnist for the New York Post and, of course, the author of Laptop from Hell. Miranda, great to chat with you, as always.
Yes, great to be with you, Vince.
It is isn't it amazing that the White House has given up the pretense and they're just straight up issuing public statements to the media now about what they're allowed to cover?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a sign of desperation because it's not as if they don't have a significant portion of the media already carrying water for Joe Biden. The fact that they've had to sort of go overt is a sign that they think that their grip on that section of the media is slipping. And in a way it is, because the avalanche of evidence that is coming out of these House Republican investigations, it's coming from whistleblowers and various testimony from Hunter Biden's former business partners, bank records, you name it. It's all kind of reaching a crescendo where even the Washington Post and the New York Times are having to take a relook at their previous reporting. And, you see the media, they're just changing just very subtly their form of words that they use. So they've been saying for over a year that there's no evidence linking Joe Biden to all these misdeeds of Hunter Biden. And now they're saying no direct evidence or no hard evidence. So they've got various forms like that. And that echoes how the Democrats, people like Dan Goldman, who seems to be Joe Biden's number one defense counsel in Congress, and he's changed his form of words in exactly the same way in the same time. So you just see them echoing. And that's why it was hilarious to see the White House counsel's office. This is obviously the product of their war room they set up to protect Joe Biden over impeachment. And it's just hilarious to see that memo come out, basically instructing the media to do their job and, attack the Republicans and protect Joe Biden, because that's what they've been doing.
Yes. And in fact, after that memo came out, it's funny. I just use CNN as an example. Their response this week has been kind of schizophrenic. They've had some coverage where they say that Joe Biden has been telling all of these lies in public. All of a sudden, they're starting to acknowledge that Biden is a dishonest human being. And then simultaneously, they're releasing fact checks on their website where they claim that Kevin McCarthy has no direct evidence of Joe Biden's involvement in his family's, underhanded business dealings. But then if you go through each of the points, they admit that Kevin McCarthy's claim is true, but it doesn't have quite enough evidence for us to take it seriously yet.
That CNN fact check is absolutely hilarious and dishonest because, if you don't deep dive into it, if you just look at the tweets or you look at the headlines, you think that they have fact-checked James Comer's sort of predicate and McCarthy's predicate for this impeachment inquiry, and they found it wanting. In fact, as you say, every single point backs up that it's true. And in fact, in the first two, they say it is true that blah, 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 but, and then they've got some bogus excuse. And then in other cases, they say, it lacks context. Ultimately, they have just verified exactly what Comer said. But, they have to give the appearance that they're being skeptical because I guess, in one sense, to give them the benefit of the doubt, that their audience has been so primed on this sort of anti-Trump, pro-Biden kind of narrative since, 2019 pretty much, or actually since Donald Trump walked down the escalator.
For sure.
To actually shift the Titanic is a big ask. And
yes.
You see what happens in the comments section of, say, the New York Times, if a columnist slightly goes off-piste and entertains the possibility that Joe Biden is not, the lovely family man and honest Joe that he pretends to be,
Right.
they just go wild in the comments. And so these media organs are afraid of their own audiences.
For sure. And I think that there's my sense is that they're also beginning to hedge their bets because they realize the writing appears to be on the wall for Joe Biden. It was like 2 weekends ago, I think, that Chuck Todd had on the biographer for a guy who wrote a book about the Biden White House, Franklin Foer. And during that interview, I thought it was very interesting that he asked the author, hey, would you be surprised if Biden stepped down before the end of the year? He gave a very specific time frame. And the guy said, no, I wouldn't be that surprised if Biden stopped, being the nominee for the party by the end of the year. CNN this week has asked multiple high-level Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Jamie Raskin, whether or not Kamala Harris is fit to be vice president again. Washington Post, David Ignatius just wrote a big piece saying that it's time for Biden to go. What is happening here with the media, would you say?
Well, David Ignatius is particularly interesting because he's sort of renowned as the CIA spokesman. He's very in bed with, as they say, the seventh floor of the CIA, which is the management. And so, it's said in Spooksville that when David Ignatius speaks, that's the CIA speaking. And so it's sort of been interpreted that David Ignatius' column the other day saying that Joe Biden should step down is just that the CIA is now done with Joe Biden, that he's too much of a liability. And, I think that Joe Biden's biggest vulnerability was the quid pro quo in Ukraine, and with firing Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor who was coming after that corrupt energy company Burisma that was paying Hunter $1 million a year. And for some reason, the CIA was caught up in that. And so I'm not sure that they were per se protecting Joe Biden, but because Joe Biden had inserted himself and his family's grift into Burisma, therefore, I guess they were de facto having to protect Joe Biden. And so there was a lot of cover-up done, and very skillfully, because when Donald Trump started getting a little too warm, and Rudy Giuliani a little too warm in their investigations in Ukraine, they were shut down. Donald Trump was shut down with an impeachment. And, looking back now and reassessing the evidence that was available at the time, it's just astonishing that they got away with it, and that Donald Trump was impeached basically for Joe Biden's sins. Incredible story, and I think we've only seen half of it. So I think now that the floodgates have opened, everyone's looking at that whole circumstance of the firing, and now finding information that shows that everything we were told then was a lie. And so they can't shut it down anymore. So I think that they just want Joe to shuffle off so that the attention moves away. And they're quite right in that if Joe's gone, the Republican investigations will fizzle.
Right. So there's a lot of interesting things going on all at once that are all converging. I want to explore this CIA point with you for a moment. So if David Ignatius is doing this at the behest or the nudging of the CIA, hey, just call for Biden to go. Be the first to say that out loud, get some other Democrats on the record, and maybe get the drumbeat going. I'm reminded of Chuck Schumer's quote from 2017. I'm sure you are as well, that he said, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. Joe Biden's scandals here all involve international business dealings, the types of things that no agency would have a better hold on than the CIA. If anyone knows the details of all of this, including recordings potentially of Joe Biden's voice with foreign business leaders, the CIA might have that. And I wonder, is this moment, and obviously you and I are engaging in complete speculation here, but educated speculation, I think. Is this the moment where we begin to see the intelligence community and or Democrats begin to leak some of this to the impeachment committees in order to accelerate Biden's demise and to replace him as a nominee?
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they don't need to go to that extent. It would be in their best interest if Joe Biden would just step aside and claim he's got some medical ailment, right?
Right.
Which wouldn't be hard. So, and remember, Nancy Pelosi, I mean, Donald Trump was president, but she went and got some updating of, what's the amendment where the president can be declared unfit? Anyway, whatever the amendment is,
yes.
She went and got that
the 25th.
Updated that's right, in the dying days of the Trump presidency, and everyone thought, oh, she's doing that for Donald Trump because they were so desperate to get rid of him. And remember they said he was crazy at one point, or, senile, ironically. And he went and had the cognitive test and, came through with flying colours. But there was some suggestion at the time that no, Nancy Pelosi was not actually coming after Trump. She was just putting that in reserve for Joe Biden in case they needed it. Because by that stage, of course, I mean, from very early in 2020, it was obvious to anyone who was on the campaign trail. I saw it with my own eyes in Iowa and New Hampshire that Joe Biden was completely gaga half the time and was just, he had to normal stump speech. He needed a teleprompter in these tiny little town halls, etc. So I think they just wanted to have that in their back pocket because probably they probably had donors saying to them, hey, we can't have this guy as president. And so that was probably Democrats reassuring people, look,
yes.
Don't worry, we've got this in our back pocket. In case he does become a liability, we can use it to get rid of him. So I don't think they need to leak anything or air any dirty laundry. If they want to, they could do that, but they would prefer that he just see the writing on the wall. And David Ignatius's column was interesting in that the first bulk of it was about how wonderful Joe Biden was, just waxing lyrical about his legacy, etc. And I think that will be the deal. If ultimately, I mean, he may end up, running for election, but
yes.
I think that what they would offer him is, look, you can go the nice way, and we will make sure that all our media patsies write you up as just the most wonderful president since FDR. All the historians will record you as that. Your legacy will be magnificent.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that, we're just throwing you to the wolves, and you will end up going in the history books as the most corrupt president we've ever had. Take your pick.
No question. And in fact, what you just described, the carrot that they would offer him there, is the thing that he desires most. He desires that more than anything. This is why he surrounds himself with White House historians. They all come over for dinner. Yeah. They decorate the Oval Office. He lets them write all of his speeches. The whole point is he wants a lasting legacy throughout history. The thing he wants more than anything is to be remembered as a great president by historians, and that's why he keeps sucking up to them.
Exactly, and he just loves having them over. They have the run of the place, and they just come in and they just whisper sweet nothings in his ear and tell him that he is the most, he always uses that word consequential, and that's because the historians tell him he's the most consequential president in America's history, or, since FDR. He really does see himself as a great statesman.
Big time. It's just amazing. Miranda Devine, thank you as always. Really appreciate it. And please have a fantastic weekend. Good to talk to you today.